Nick Cannon went on his own show and sat across from Amber Rose and said, and I quote, "I F with Trump." And Amber Rose said, Trump isn't racist because he appointed a black woman as pardon czar. And Nick said the Democrats are the party of the KKK. Now, I could come on here and clown these two. It would be easy. The arguments are that bad. But that's not what this is, because what happened on that show is not just about Nick Cannon and Amber Rose. It's about a pattern, a habit, and a choice that a growing number of black celebrities are making. Not because they did the research, but because it benefits them personally to make it. Today, quickly, we're talking about the arguments, the receipts, and what's driving this. So let's go. Let's take the argument one by one, because they deserve to be examined, not just dismissed. Argument one, Trump isn't a racist because he appointed Alice Johnson, a black woman, as pardon czar. One appointment, that's the bar. One black woman in a role while the same administration rolled back disparate impact protections that black Americans have used to fight housing discrimination, employment discrimination, and civil rights violations for over 50 years. While the Department of Justice terminated a landmark environmental justice settlement that was protecting black residents in Alabama from sewage infrastructure that was literally making them sick. While black unemployment rate climbed to 8.3% by November 2025, the highest since 2021, partly because black workers represent 19% of the federal workforce and were disproportionately hit by the mass federal firings. One appointment does not cancel a policy record. That's not how math works. Argument two, Nick said Democrats are the party of the KKK, Republicans freed the slaves. Now, this is the talking point that you'll hear a lot of maggots point to. And obviously, Nick Cannon has been indoctrinated into that society. So we're going to use his gotcha and we're going to take it apart. Because until you apply literally any historical context, yes, in the 1860s, Republicans were the anti-slave party. Yes, in the Reconstruction era, Southern Democrats were aligned with the white supremacist violence. That is true. And it is also true that both parties underwent a complete ideological realignment over the following century. The Southern strategy, which I've mentioned numerous times in my podcast. Nixon in 1968, deliberately courting white Southern voters who were furious about the Civil Rights Act, was the moment the Republican Party explicitly invited the same Dixiecrat energy in through the front door. The party switched. This is not a debate. This is documented history. Nick Cannon cited W.E.B. Du Bois in the same breath. Du Bois, who wrote about the structural betrayal of black people by both parties. Using Du Bois to defend Trump is not scholarship. That is a name drop. Argument three, Amber Rose said she knows Trump isn't racist because, and these are her words at the RNC in 2024, "I realize Donald Trump and his supporters don't care if you're black, white, gay, or straight. It's all love. These are my people." This is a woman who in 2016 called Trump a quote, and I quote this, "an effing idiot." And she hoped he wasn't president. And then he called her personally to ask her to speak at his convention. And now these are her people. That is not a political awakening. That is access. That is proximity to power. That is someone who got a phone call from the president of the United States and confused being invited to the table with the table working for you. Now, let's put the actual record on the table. Because if you're going to say that this man isn't a threat to black people, you need to account for all this. Central Park 5, 1989. Trump paid $85,000 for a full-page newspaper ads calling for the death penalty for 5 black and Latino teenagers who were innocent. They were exonerated in 2002. Trump called their $41 million settlement a disgrace in 2014, and he has never apologized. The defamation lawsuit they filed against him is still in federal court right now. Disparate impact December 2025, Trump's Department of Justice eliminated the disparate impact standard, a 60-year-old civil rights protection that allowed courts to find racial discrimination based on unequal outcomes, even without proof of explicit intent. Housing discrimination, employment discrimination, now significantly harder to challenge. Gone. Period. That's under Trump's administration. DEI. The administration cut $350 million in grants to minority service institutions, schools. They educate millions of Black, Hispanic, Asian, and Native American students. While redirecting some of it to HBCUs, the sleight of hand using HBCU funding as a shield while gutting the broader infrastructure that supports Black students nationwide. Over 75% of HBCU students depends on Pell Grants. Those programs are now under threat. Federal workforce. Black Americans represented nearly 19% of the federal workforce versus 13% of the civilian workforce. The mass firings hit agencies with the most non-white workers the hardest, including the Department of Education. Black unemployment jumped to 8.3% by November 2025. Environmental justice. April 2025, Department of Justice terminated a landmark environmental justice settlement protecting Black residents in Alabama's Black Belt from sewage systems causing disease. Not reformed, terminated. That is the record. That is what was done to Black communities. Not what was said about them on a podcast, not who was appointed to a symbolic role, not what party freed the slaves in 1865, the record right now in this administration. Now, Amber Rose, let's be honest, Amber Rose has been irrelevant for years. She can say whatever she wants. The consequences for her are minimal because the platform is minimal. And that's just truth at this point. Nick Cannon is different. Nick Cannon has a production company. He has staff. He has the Masked Singer. He has Wildin' Out. He has people whose livelihoods are connected to his brand. And when you go on your own show and say, I fuck with Trump, in the middle of an administration that is actively hostile to diversity in media, actively defunding institutions that serve Black communities, actively dismantle the civil rights infrastructure, you are not just speaking for yourself, you are attaching your brand to all of that. And everyone who works with you has to carry that too. This is not about canceling Nick Cannon. I honestly don't care about doing stuff like that. I think that's actually quite counterproductive because other people suffer. But this is about accountability, being real when you have reach. You built that platform talking to Black audiences. You do not get to use that platform to validate someone whose record works against those very same audiences and then say it's just your opinion. And here's the part nobody wants to say out loud, because this isn't just about Nick and Amber. Lizzo said it herself in December 2024 in a video she later deleted. She said, you're about to see an influx of people who see that it is more profitable and more beneficial to join that side. You're going to see it. It's already started. And she was right. And she identified the reason: profitable and beneficial. Here's what Trump Access offers a Black celebrity who's willing to carry the water: visibility in conservative media, which has a mass reach, a level of protection, the idea that you are one of the good ones who won't be targeted, invitations, calls from the president, convention speeches, the feeling of being seen by power. And here's what it costs the communities you came from: legitimacy for a policy agenda that is actively rolling back the protections to those very communities. Your face, your name, your credibility used to tell Black voters that this is fine, that this is safe, that you personally checked and it's okay. The difference between ignorance and complicity is research. If you do not know the Central Park 5 story, that is ignorance. If you learned it and still say, I F with Trump, that is a choice. And the choice has a name. The arguments are lazy because the arguments are not the point. The access is the point. The brand positioning is the point. And the Black community, the same community that built these platforms, that bought the music, that watched the shows, is being used as a prop to make that positioning look like something more than what it is. I'm not telling you who to support. That's not my job. My job is to make sure that when someone uses a bad argument to justify a harmful alignment, somebody names that argument as bad and the alignment as harmful. Alice Johnson being pardon czar doesn't cancel the Central Park 5. Republicans freeing the slaves in 1865 does not cancel the Department of Justice eliminating disparate impact protections in 2025. Getting a personal phone call from the president does not mean the president's policies are good for your people. These are not complicated ideas. They require one thing only: the willingness to look at the actual record instead of feeling the access gives you. The clout trap is real, and it catches people who are smart enough to know better, because the reward is immediate and the damage lands on someone else. Don't fall for it, and don't let anyone use their platform to tell you to fall for it either. And you can quote me on that.
You don't see red lining. The smoke stop shuffling, quote the smoke.